Hey, this is Zero FG, and today we're going to be talking about learning 6 O'Clock by Dream Theater on the bass guitar. And to your surprise, you might think John Myung, the six-string guy. I mean, he was the first guy that I knew of that played a six-string that inspired me to buy my first six-string. I think it was an Ibanez with really narrow string spaces, and I didn't like it, and it had a really tinny sound. I didn't like it. I sold it. But, John Myung, the six-string guy. But this song, 6 O'Clock, funny that it has 6 in the name, you can play it on a 4-string. And there's quite a few 4-string Dream Theater songs you can play. And many of you probably have a 4-string, and many of you probably like Dream Theater. So this is a great song to learn. And there's really tricky spots. There's some stretching that you got to do, some pivoting, and really interesting right-hand thing that I'm going to talk about because there's a tricky spot. And actually, it's one of the hardest parts of the song for me. Let's talk about tone and maybe what gear that John Myung's using. So I'm thinking, okay, well, he's using a 4-string. I remember seeing a picture of him. With a jazz bass. This one right here, actually. So I was thinking maybe I'll use a jazz bass for this because according to the Wikipedia, he had a 4-string Spectre NS2 that he was using on Images and Words. So I Googled that. I guess it's that thing. I don't actually know how that sounds. I contemplated just using the neck pickup of this. I wasn't going to use a Music Man, and that's what he uses now, but it didn't sound like a Music Man at all. So I didn't really want to do that. It looks like when he switched to 6 strings during Awake, high-end Tobias basic models, former Tobias luthier, Nicholas Tung. So he used a Tung wing bass. So I kind of pulled these up. I used Talk Bass to look all this up. This is all the stuff that interests me, So what does it look like, What does it look like? You can see it on his Progressive Concepts.
Time-consuming and not very fun.
This is the bass. And actually, I was looking up his gear on Equipboard, as I like to do. I came across this, that's the bass. So just because he has a 6-string bass doesn't mean he needs to use it. And actually, I preferred using a 6-string bass pretty much exclusively through university just because I could do everything with it. I wasn't ever in a situation where I had to switch, I just brought this. That's the nice thing about 6-string basses that I really like is that if you got one that sounds right and it has the tone you want and the whole thick neck thing doesn't bother you and all that stuff, you're always going to be in a situation. You go to an R&B gig, you need the low B string. You're playing fusion jazz and you want to rip up top, you're good. You want to just play 4-string stuff, you're good. So I actually really love 6-string basses. I have quite a few, actually. Actually, none you can see in the back, I guess. But I don't have this wing bass. Apparently, there's only like 100 made or something. So what am I using? I'm going to use a jazz bass. And I pretty much, for this recording that I did on the video, the playthrough video, I pretty much used a Geddy Lee setup. I have the Geddy Lee Sands amp. I use that. It sounds amazing. I have a Geddy Lee signature bass. Sounds freaking awesome. So anyway, 4-string song. Doesn't sound like a Music Man. He wasn't really using Music Mans back then, I guess. He went to the Yamaha situation. And I remember back then, and this is why I ended up getting custom-made 6-string basses, because back then, 6-string basses were not really a thing. People didn't play 6-string basses. There was John Patitucci. I remember there was like a Warwick Thumb that was really expensive and really heavy at the time. And I was pretty young, and I didn't have money. But if I did, I was going to buy a bass. And I didn't like the Ibanez one had such tight string spacing. I remember getting my fingers caught all the time. And I would always get and it just had the worst tone. There's a guy, Chris Stambaugh, New Hampshire. I remember this guy, Greg Bagley. He's got a YouTube. I don't know what he does now, but back in the day, he got this bass. Chris Stambaugh made it for him, a custom bass, and I was like, I want one, because it was, I mean, if you're going to buy a Warwick Thumb, it was pretty much the same price, except I can get the specs I want. So, super cool. I ended up getting that. I'll just go grab it. I'll show you. So this was my main bass, actually, pretty much throughout university and pretty much throughout forever. This is my most reliable bass. It's got everything, all the bells and whistles, stuff I didn't even know I didn't like, but it's on there. I got the MIDI, I got the MIDI 13-pin MIDI thing that I found out I didn't really need or like. I ended up borrowing. You know what? I'll do another video on custom basses. I'm not going to talk about this. So let's talk about the song. Let's not talk about custom basses. Another thing I wanted to do with the tone is there's a clank to his playing. And, you know, combined with the drive, and I've talked about this on the Blink-182 video, you know, putting drive in your tone. And that's what I love about the Sans amp. You can just add a little bit of dirt to it and it sounds so good. But on top of that, something I wanted to do with the playing as well is this, instead of just, I want to have a clank to it. So I'm actually kind of spanking. I'm kind of doing like instead of playing through this way, I'm kind of doing like a 45-degree angle through the string. And I'm kind of spanking it on the frets. I guess similar to I guess there's a similar concept to slap bass or whatever. You know, the hitting onto the frets and stuff, that clank. So I think that's kind of a part of John Mayung's sound a little bit. I definitely see in videos where he's really just spanking. He's spanking through those strings, you know? I think that kind of covers the tone and the gear. I guess you won't have the gear because this tongue bass, but whatever. Sounds good. The recording sounds good, I think. Let's get into the actual song. I got the tab on the Patreon. I got this whole notation. It's got just the tab, just the notation, then it's got the both. We're going to go through the both. And like I said in the other video, if you're new here, I'm not here to teach the notes. I want to talk about the things that may complicate things, the things that maybe spice up the song. Spice up your playing from just playing distinctly black and white. I'm playing the notes and I'm not playing the notes, to actually multiple ways to play one note. You know, you can play a note. There's so many ways to play a note, and that's what I want to focus on, because that's what really sets you apart from the noobs. You know what I mean? All right, so for the intro, I guess I don't have the green screen, so I can't actually put my finger on. But for the intro, I guess you can figure out the slide. I mean, pretty self-explanatory. Now there's some flavor in this riff, this intro riff that kind of is like the chorus of the song, I guess. This. Now here's the flavor. Now since I'm going to play that with the pinky, I'm going to slide into it with my pinky, I guess. And my thumb can stay the same, and we're going to talk about pivoting your thumb later. But essentially, you can rotate your thumb. Bling. You can come in on the 5, the D. So that's some spice there that you don't want to miss. It's doubling with the guitar. The guitar is doing that as well. Now this octave thing is the hardest part in the song. And I'll tell you why. It's because of the string skipping, for one, and for two, it's not just a normal pattern. So here's the mentality that I use so that I'm not tripping up over myself. And it is complicated. It's very difficult. And you might think of raking. And raking, when I say raking, I'm talking about when I'm on that 6th fret on the D string and I pluck with my index finger, I can go with the motion and hit the 4 on the E string. Now, that if you can do that stuff, you can play really fast, especially if you're doing 4th stuff. The whole raking thing, you can play insanely fast if you're really good at that. But in this situation, I think the best method for keeping steady time so that your notes are even, and even when I was listening to the recording, it's John Mayung, even, it seemed there must have been an edit there or something, because at the end there was kind of like this weird chop, but it didn't really matter. He's sitting pretty low in the mix anyway. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm completely alternating every note. I'll put on the GoPro so you can see slow-mo. And actually, let's go to the end of the song because it's the exact same thing but doubled. So here we go, bar 117. I'll put the slow-mo with the GoPro. And at the end, I did the 3-finger because John Mayung's a 3-finger guy. He does the 3-finger a lot. So, and that's what it sounded like to me on the recording. So that's the hardest part in the song for me, and I really think that it's worth practicing that. I mean, we had this, I remember in university, we had to go through this worksheet that had essentially this, where you're string skipping, and it had all these odd placements of when you're changing strings. So the whole point of the assignment was that you're constantly alternating your fingers, your right hand, but doing it, navigating all these odd string skips. So I think it's a very valuable skill to learn. And here's a great situation. And I actually came across this mentality when I read something about the Master of Puppets riff, that riff that's like this. So that's a riff where you might want to rake it. But the problem I was having with that at the time is when I was raking it, I got this little swung kind of feel, and it wasn't even. But when I started alternating my fingers, do do dee do do dee do do dee do do dee do do dee, then I completely evened out the time of it. And this is why I use the same mentality for this song, bar 23 on this sheet, because it essentially sets you up so that you can't really fail. Once you've got this technique down, alternating every time, and you can even go backwards if you want. Try doing it starting on your middle finger. Could I do that? Yeah, I guess practice both ways, so that if you ever were in the situation where you started on the wrong finger, then you can always navigate it. And it's going to help you when you go to other songs that are going to have similar times where you need to do these string skipping things. And you're going to have them, guaranteed. So let's talk about the main kind of verse riff. And I think this is another challenging part when I was first learning this years ago. The stretch, I guess, because you could play it you could all play it in one position, but I actually kind of find that more tricky. You're dealing with more string skipping, you're dealing with the open strings that you got to mute now. So I think you have more control when you're doing the stretch. And for the most part, there's only one stretch anyway. And this is where I want to talk about pivoting, because you don't technically really even have to stretch, and that's the beauty of it. And another thing I like about going up here is just the tone. The tone is just got that girth that I want. You see how thin that is? And this is what I love about, especially with a P bass, that whole difference in tone from string to string. If I want a darker tone, if I want a girthier tone or some more mid-range or some brightness, I can change that based on where I'm playing. And it might not be ergonomical, but you have those choices that you can make that, you know, may make it harder, but it gives you that tone that you want, that balls girth, hair on balls, you know what I mean? All right. So I'm just gonna show the pivot essentially. I'm gonna use the GoPro here. All right. And essentially I'm kind of keeping like this upright bass kind of hand position where I only span 3 frets essentially. And I mean, you can cover a lot of ground with this pivoting technique. But, you know, for the sake of fatigue management, I guess, you know, I'm keeping my cards close and, you know, stretching when I need to. Keeping myself ready to go. It's kind of like keeping on the balls of your feet. The balls of your feet. You know, like a boxer who's kind of on his toes, keeping moving, being ready for anything. I want to be in a position where I'm ready for stuff, and this does it for me. This upright bass kind of mentality. You know, I want to use I use the pinky a lot. And that's the thing I think a lot of beginners, they don't do. You want to be ready for opening up, but I got a lot of power here. So essentially you can pivot instead of stretching. You don't need to stretch so much. So you can just isolate that whole section and just work that out, and try to keep your thumb relaxed. That's one of the important things. Because your thumb might get sore and tired. But yeah, essentially, I can cover quite a distance with my thumb in one spot. From the 2nd fret to the 8th fret pretty easily. And that's actually kind of using that technique is kind of why I ended up trying to do tuning in fifths, because I could span that range, but I ended up using the tuning in fifths for a whole different thing that you can check out on my channel. There's a song called Asahi that I wrote. I wrote a few songs on my EP, solo bass EP, that you can check out that are tuned in fifths. So I just, tried one thing and it ended up being another thing. So it's cool to try things. All right, let's check out this riff coming out of the verse. And one thing I do like using that open string there. So that I can shift my hand position. And that's one thing that guys like Jaco Pastorius used, James Jamerson, they use open strings quite a lot to navigate the bass, And here's a situation where, doing a fast lick like this, that's where maybe the tonal aspects of whether I played the open string versus the fretted string, you aren't going to really hear that. But you're going to hear it on, you're going to hear that. But you don't really hear the difference. All right, so in this keyboard solo, so I got keyboard solo here, bar 61. We're going to bar 65 because essentially the keyboard solo plays the verse riff, but then it does the cool little addition. Remember I said I like this little claw position, but I'm ready for anything. But I'm going to open up here because I'm going to use my pinky and do the finger per fret thing. And then I go back to the claw, pivot. And essentially here, to hit that next one, I'm just essentially barring my fingers. I'm essentially pushing down that way. But then you can just lift up slightly. There's all these micro movements you can do with your fingers. I'm just rocking back and forth. I'm barred, but I'm kind of rocking back and forth to unfret the one string. And another thing too is you don't really have to worry when you pluck through the string. You're muting. You end up muting the string below anyways, so the bar doesn't really affect the accidental playing of a chord. I'm kind of doing, see this whole claw mentality, so I can go from here and hit that, go back to the claw. So now I can kind of go up. I can essentially do the fret per finger up one or down one pretty easily. That's kind of what I like about this idea for this song. It's not going to work all the time, but I definitely like this hand position. those are some things to think about. Being able to open your hand to get that, you got to switch to ring index on this little rock back and forth. All right. Then you get a nice little break after this because you're going to need it because the workout's coming. Essentially, this is just essentially the best fingering that works for me. As far as this is where I would use the tab, as far as help with the fingering. But it's essentially the same concept. You can You can do this with all these little micro shifts. Now I'm just pivoting again. If you want to make that stretch, bar 81. Yeah, so for bar 81, to make the shift to get up to here, you're essentially doing what I call the accordion. So I'm on the pinky here, 8th fret D string. I'm accordioning in, and now I'm out. Now I'm in this position for a while. So bar 83, we have this octave thing that even John Myung kind of chokes on the notes a little bit on that, but it works. It's fine. I actually think I played it wrong in the recording, actually, from the video. I think I played instead, but that's okay. This is something where you might want to isolate this. And you're barring. Actually, kind of bummed. I'm pretty sure I missed those little nuanced notes. I'm pretty sure I played it wrong on the cover, actually. Oh, I did play it wrong. I'm pretty sure. Well, this tab is right. Well, whatever. It's done. What's done is done. All right. So yeah, you want to focus on and you can accordion yourself out there. This is the pickup to bar 84, and this is one way that I think would be more comfortable or ergonomic to play. You're accordioning out. So essentially you're really put into these spots where you can make these hand position changes pretty naturally with the accordion mentality. Expanding here. Now so essentially you went from here to here, which is pretty cool. And you did it, and you can do it naturally. Then you're back to rocking and rolling again. Giving her, while the guitar player essentially plays what you just played. So I think that's actually kind of all to the song. I mean, I'm pretty sure at bar 105 you can figure out. You know? Oh yeah, this is another one that's actually a little tricky. Just before the hardest part of the song. That one. But so you're doing the bar thing again. Right? So that's not too bad. But at that speed it's right? So that's kind of the tune. So I got this tab and notation on the Patreon if you want to check it out. I think there's a point where you shouldn't rely on tabs. I think there's a point in your playing where you should really, if you have the time, really spend the time trying to learn things by ear, because I think it's one of the most valuable skills that you can have. Transfers to any musical instrument. And it makes learning stuff a lot easier. It makes you break down stuff like that tricky section. You know, I put some time into actually figuring out what's the best way to do this thing. And even with the workout, you know, I'm thinking about what's the best way to play this, what finger positions, what hand positions do I want to be in so that it's as easy as possible for me and it sounds the best. You know, these are the things that you break down when you're learning by ear as well, because you're trying to pick out the notes, but you're also trying to figure out, where do I play it on my instrument? And when you have the tab essentially spoon feeding that for you, I think you're really missing out on a big part of your musical development. I think one of the most important parts of your musical development. So I think tabs are a great way to have, I guess, a one night stand with a song. Like, I like the song and I want to play it. I want to spend 5 minutes playing the song and I never want to play it again after that. Okay, pull up the tab, get your rocks off playing a song just for fun. Another use for tabs, I think, that I would endorse is you got to get on stage in 20 minutes and play the song and you've never heard the song before. So that's where, you know, you might want to use the tabs and stuff. But I think as far as your home practice routine, I'm really kind of against tabs. I think it's great in the beginning as a means for you to learn muscle memory and navigating the physical elements of learning the instrument. But it's at a certain point, once you've got those things down and you're capable of playing with a band, I think it's really worth spending the time learning a song by ear. And even if you get things wrong, try and do it. And then once you say, all right, I'm done, now go look up the work or have someone who's better than you or someone who knows has a better ear than you, someone for them to go over it and correct your stuff. Because then you can learn, okay, here's where I got it wrong. Then you go back to the song and figure it out. Actually, I should do a whole video on how to transcribe and why it's important. So, yeah, I mean, if you go to Patreon, I guess it's just going to support me continuing to do this. So that's ultimately what it's about. And if you really want the tabs, it's there. Yeah, so that's 6 O'Clock by Dream Theater, John Myung on bass, the 6-string guy, but it's a 4-string song. I hope you enjoyed this. Smash to subscribe, like and subscribe, share this, comment, and hope you enjoyed it. Take it easy.